So many PhD types, academic types, they think they're above the capitalist process. They think their PhD entitles them to the better life. My father, bless his heart, he ran for lieutenant governor against his boss, the governor, and he lost. And the governor said to him, "You'll never work in this state again." So what would you say about a person's skill sets? What carries you into the future? It's not your college degree.
When I got out of the military, I knew how to work hard. I didn't have a problem working hard. That was not tough for me. I learned that from the military, just like yourself, having served in the Marines. And my dad was a worker. He ran a 99-cent store in Inglewood, and he's always been a worker. So I got the work part, but the sales side I didn't have. I started working at Valley Total Fitness, and I learned how to sell. I was coached by a guy named Cisco. He was my manager at Bally's. He sent me to Fox Hills Mall because I couldn't sell memberships at the gym. And he says, before you give up sales, I want you to go try to sell memberships at the mall. I said, Cisco, I can't sell memberships at the gym. You want me to sell it at the mall? He said, yes. I went to Fox Hills Mall. First day, I was standing behind the booth. I was so afraid to talk to anybody and engage. And the next thing you know, I came to the side of the booth because it was these two other guys. And I came in front of the booth, and one girl came in, bought the first membership from me, $75 down, $32. I remember till today, this was in 99. I called Cisco. I said, Cisco, somebody bought a contract from me. He says, you gotta be kidding. I said, no. So then I sold second, third, fourth, and I became rookie of the month. I became rookie of the quarter. Then I became rookie of the year. And then I saw the world from a completely different perspective once you learn how to sell, because it's almost a skill set of freedom. Whether if you ever see the girl, the hot girl in town who dates a guy that's maybe a 5 or a 6 and she's an 8 or a 9, and you're wondering, how the hell does she end up with them? There's a very high likelihood the guy's a great salesperson, okay? If you ever get passed up by somebody on a promotion and that person's not as qualified as you to get the promotion, but they get it, they probably sold themselves better for that position than you did. If you ever notice in a family setting where, the time comes where somebody has to make a decision for the family's future and your idea is better than another person's idea, the other person was better at selling their idea than you. This whole sales thing goes in many different ways. My kids, when they come up to me, they want to ask me for something. Say, Dad, I want to go to movies. I want to go to a restaurant. I said, sell me why. Not tell me why, sell me why. And they'll say, well, I think we got to go there because, I said, tell me why. And then many times they'll come and they'll say, Dad, we want to go in the ocean this week with the boat. I'm like, let's negotiate a deal. Tell me why you deserve to go there. Well, do you remember last week when you asked to do this? We did this. Do you remember last week? And I think the skill set of selling, negotiation, reading people, intuition is probably some of the most important skill sets, because you are right. I think they are going to try to impose their power and force to take away more freedom if you allow it to. But if the right people stay a little paranoid and they read them a little bit better and you have some intuition to know that nothing's more important than your freedom, if we fight back, I don't think they'll be successful.
That's correct. The saying we have at Rich Dad, it's sales equals income. And so I meet so many people who say, well, I can't afford this, I can't afford that, I can't afford to buy real estate, I can't afford to buy Bitcoin. Well, the reason you can't afford to buy something is because you can't sell. And sales equals income. So back in 1974, my dad wanted me to go to the University of Hawaii and get my PhD. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to learn how to sell. He was upset. Salesmen are crooks, they're con artists. It's not a very honorable profession. But that's why he was poor. So many PhD types, academic types, they think they're above the capitalist process. They think their PhD entitles them to the better life. But if you go for your PhD, you really don't have the skill sets to be in the capitalist world. When my father, bless his heart, he ran for lieutenant governor against his boss, the governor, as a Republican in the People's Republic of Hawaii. Hawaii's 100% communist. And so he ran as a Republican and he lost. And the governor said to him, you'll never work in this state again. So the power the governor had over my dad was his job. And the hardest thing for a school teacher, Patrick, as a capitalist, you really don't need a school teacher. You need a salesman. And my father just couldn't sell. He just kept holding up his PhD. I have a PhD, but he couldn't sell. And you know what I mean? And I saw that. And that's when my rich dad, who had no education at all, said, you better learn how to sell pretty quickly. So I was at your birthday party and I saw your team, both men and women. What they have is confidence. And that confidence, ability to sell, to communicate and all that, that'll carry them into the future. And what's going to happen is as the economy keeps stealing our freedoms, they're going to have the income via which you take advantage of real estate, of whatever they Bitcoin, whatever they want to invest in. But if you can't sell, remember, sales equals income. And if you can't sell, you don't have income. But when I sat down with my poor dad, he just couldn't hear it. He said, salesmen are crooks. You know, they deceive people, they cheat people and all this. But that's what prevented him from getting ahead. Have you seen people like that?
Oh, tremendous. I mean, my dad, I mean, he was a worker, but, he was always stuck with where he was at. But, the biggest thing listening to the story of your father is your dad wasn't afraid to go up. So maybe he wasn't a good salesman. Maybe he wasn't an entrepreneur, but the guy definitely had courage to go up against his former boss as a governor. And that courage was definitely passed down to his son with the courage you got to do what you do and the books you write and the buttons you push and the predictions you make and the controversy and the opposition you face. You piss a lot of people off with some of the things that you talk about, but you're comfortable doing that because you got the right genes there. No, I will say a couple things to you. I think the one word I think about is how can a person be irreplaceable? Right? That's how you increase your market value if you are irreplaceable. So how do we become irreplaceable? To me, if a person's a W-2 person, let's pick a engineer, a coder, okay? And a person produces the software for you. They're so good of a coder that they've had so many years of building that code for you, the software for you. They are somewhat irreplaceable where you kind of need them. Like, listen, here's what I've done for you. I've developed software for you that's made you $15 million. I think I deserve a raise. I think I need to be at 285. I think I need to be at 140, 120, whatever the position of this person is. You're irreplaceable, right? So somebody may be watching the same path. I'm not somebody that went to school to be an engineer. I can't be a coder. That's not me. Great. You may be watching this and saying, well, what other way can I be irreplaceable? Well, if you learn how to make your own money without somebody paying you that money like a job, if you learn how to make your own money independently, if you don't rely on the government to support you, if you don't rely on your parents to support you or anybody to support you, independently make your own money, you're essentially irreplaceable. So the more irreplaceable people that we have that are not leaning and relying on an organization, institution, or the government to take care of them, taxes goes lower. There's a lot of things going on today, but my biggest thing would be whoever I am that's listening to this, whatever country you're living in, we're seeing a lot of this stuff taking place all over the world. Number one thing you got to do to be irreplaceable and have a lot of backing when you speak and have a lot of weight is, one, go make your millions, okay? Two, make the investments to be protected financially yourself, your family. You don't have to worry about what somebody else is going to do to you. If you accept a job or career or whatever you're doing it because you're choosing to do it, not because you're forced to do it. You choose to put yourself in that kind of a situation. And if you do that, a government and an institution fears somebody like you because you don't need them. There's always this notion about when moms and sons or father and sons, kids, sometimes they go through this challenge because the kid's growing up always needing mommy and daddy for money, always needing mommy and daddy for money, mommy and daddy for money, mommy and daddy for money. Then there's this awkward transition where mommy and daddy can threaten to take stuff away from the kid by saying, if you don't do this, I'm not going to give you an allowance. And eventually the kid says, listen, I make my own money now, $20,000. That threat doesn't work anymore. And parents sometimes is uncomfortable to give up that control. They lose it, right? So the government doesn't like it when you no longer need them. The government doesn't like it when you no longer need their welfare state or their support or any of that because you independently make money. If you don't position yourself in a way to make your own money and be free, you are going to be living a life of conformity and being a hostage. That is not a situation. We were not created to be held hostage by another organization because we desperately need them. We are creative. We were created to be creative and solve many different problems. Unfortunately, you cannot do that when you're relying on the government. How do you solve that? By exactly what Robert's talking about, which is sales.
And so when I was a kid, I couldn't listen to my poor dad anymore. Plus, I was really horrible in school anyway. And they kept saying, well, if you don't get good grades, you won't get a good job. I said, good, I'm on the right track. So I would play Monopoly with my rich dad, but I had to work for him for free. That was the deal. And he says, if I pay you money, you think like an employee. So I would work for him for free, and then he'd play Monopoly and teach me. So as I got older, when I was about 12 years old, he says, okay, your graduate course is this. I had to go to he had a lot of rental units. He called them rental units. My poor dad, the school teacher, called them slums. I think you know the formula, Patrick, is the real estate buys the land. So Rich Dad was putting up these military Quonset huts on this really great land, but the Quonset huts, the military were buying the land. So he put these little cheap ass Quonset huts up there. And my poor dad went nuts. You know, he went, oh, how dare you do that? He's taking advantage of all these people. He's a complete Marxist socialist. So when I was about 12, Rich Dad says, okay, we played enough Monopoly. You're going to graduate. And so the next graduation course was I had to go knock on doors and collect rent. I tell you, Patrick, I learned more about life knocking on doors, collecting rent, because everybody who was late in their payments had an excuse. They all had a TV set. I could hear it going in the background. They weren't working and they didn't pay their rent. It was one of the best educations I ever had.
I can only imagine.
Oh my God, at 12 years old, you know, that also twisted my path because my poor dad had excuses too, if you know what I mean. I heard similar excuses collecting rent from these very, very poor people. And I heard the same excuses at home. And so that's why when Rich Dad said to me, when I came back from the Marine Corps, he says, you better learn how to sell. I didn't want to do it because nobody likes rejection. Everybody hates rejection.